Your toxicity, Dad. We are cutting ties. You will never, ever see Leo or Maya again. My 34-year-old son Jason said those words to me on a brisk Tuesday afternoon in the driveway of my home, standing right beside his wife Vanessa. He spoke with a cold, rehearsed detachment that sliced cleaner than a razor. His 14-year-old twins, my grandchildren, Leo and Maya, were sitting in the back of his SUV, staring out the tinted windows with wide, confused eyes. I reached toward the glass just to wave goodbye, but Jason stepped directly into my line of sight, blocking them. "Don't even look at them, Dad," Jason said, crossing his arms. "We're moving across state lines next week. We're changing our numbers. I've already told the school that you are under no circumstances permitted to pick them up or contact them. As far as my children are concerned, their grandfather no longer exists." I stood there on the pavement of the suburban home I had paid off through 40 years of working 60-hour weeks as an independent plumbing contractor. My hands, thick and scarred from decades of wrenching rusted pipes, trembled at my sides. "Jason, please," I whispered, my voice cracking under the sudden weight in my chest. "What did I do? Tell me what I did. Is it because I asked about the family business loan? Is it because I asked why you needed my signature on the trust equity?" Vanessa stepped forward, her eyes narrowing into icy slits. "Don't pretend to be the victim, Thomas," she snapped, pulling her designer coat tightly around herself. "You've been controlling this family with your money for years. You think just because you have a bit of wealth stored away, you get to judge how we live? You're out of our lives, permanently." Jason didn't even look back as he climbed into the driver's seat. The heavy door slammed shut, the engine roared to life, and the SUV kicked up gravel as it sped away, carrying away the two young people who were the absolute center of my universe. I stood there in that empty driveway for a very long time, watching the taillights vanish around the bend, completely unaware of the horrifying web of deception my son had spun behind my back. At 67 years old, I lived a simple life. After my wife, Eleanor, passed away from cancer 6 years ago, my grandchildren were my entire world. Leo loved building wooden model ships with me in my garage workshop, and Maya would spend hours at my kitchen island, sipping hot cocoa while I helped her with her algebra homework. I had worked hard my entire life so my family would never have to suffer the poverty I endured growing up. I wasn't a millionaire, but through disciplined saving, real estate investments, and running a successful mid-sized plumbing enterprise, I had built a secure legacy. When Leo and Maya were born, I made a solemn promise to Eleanor on her deathbed. Those kids would never carry a single dollar of student debt. I established 2 private, dedicated 529 educational trust accounts, quietly depositing tens of thousands of dollars into them every single year. By the time the twins turned 14, those tuition funds had grown into a formidable nest egg, nearly $350,000, fully managed and locked strictly for higher education.
"You saved yourselves," I said, looking from Evelyn to David. "Where is the money from the sale, David?" David blinked, shuffling his feet. It's held in a trust account for your care, Dad. Naturally, there are administrative fees, and we had to settle some family obligations." "Family obligations?" I asked softly. "You mean your failed real estate investment in the city, or Evelyn's boutique debt?" David's face turned beet red. "That's none of your business. Look, Dad, the papers are recorded at the county courthouse. The buyer signed the final wires this morning. The property no longer belongs to you. You need to get back in the cab and let us handle this." I stood there on the driveway I had paved 30 years ago, looking at my children. They weren't monsters, or at least they hadn't started out that way. They were just ordinary people who had allowed subtle greed, financial desperation, and arrogance to rot their moral core. They saw an old man in a hospital bed and decided he was an obstacle to be cleared, a quick paycheck to solve their middle-aged failures. "Who bought it?" I asked quietly. A real estate developer from out of state, Laura interjected quickly, trying to sound soothing. A man named Mr. Harrison. He bought it sight unseen for cash. He's turning the whole valley plot into a private residential estate. Dad, please, just come with us to the facility. It's really nice. I built this house, Laura, I said, looking her straight in the eyes. Your mother died in the master bedroom. You took your first steps on this porch, and you sold it behind my back while I was bleeding on a surgeon's table. Without waiting for another fake excuse, I turned around, got back into the taxi, and told the driver to take me to the office of Walter Vance. Walter was my oldest friend, a retired country lawyer who had known me since we were teenagers. His office was a small, dusty room filled with old legal manuals and the smell of stale pipe tobacco. When I walked in, leaning on my cane, Walter nearly dropped his spectacles. "Arthur, what in God's name are you doing out of the hospital?" Walter exclaimed, jumping up to help me into a leather armchair. "I heard about your surgery." "Walter," I said, leaning my head back against the leather, my breath coming short. "David used the 2021 power of attorney to sell Pine Ridge Road. He closed the deal yesterday while I was in ICU." Walter froze, his jaw dropping. "He did what?" I said, "He sold it to an out-of-state developer named Harrison for $800,000. He told me it's a done deal, recorded at the county." Walter slapped his desk in sudden fury. "That ungrateful little viper! I drafted that power of attorney for you, Arthur, and it specifically contained a fiduciary limitation clause. David had no legal authority to sell your primary residence unless 2 independent physicians certified you as permanently mentally incapacitated. Did he get those certifications?" Walter leaned over his computer, his hands flying across the keyboard as he accessed the county clerk's online database. For 10 long minutes, the only sound in the office was the click of the mouse and the ticking of an old grandfather clock in the corner. Finally, Walter leaned back, his eyes narrowing as he read the screen. "Arthur, something isn't right here." "What do you mean?"
I couldn't breathe. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Where did the money go? 4 weeks ago, Richard said, his voice trembling with anger, a series of major structural withdrawals were executed. The funds weren't transferred to an educational institution. They were liquidated into a private joint account bearing Jason's name and yours. "My name?" I yelled, standing up so fast my chair rattled against the wall. "I never signed off on any liquidation. Those funds are locked for tuition. Early withdrawal incurs massive tax penalties." "Whoever executed presented a signed power of attorney amendment. It bears your signature, Thomas, dated 3 months ago. The document authorized Jason to reallocate the educational trust equity into an immediate family welfare fund due to alleged health complications on your end." I stared at the black ink at the bottom of the page. It was a forgery, a meticulous, highly practiced forgery of my signature. Jason hadn't just cut me out of his life because he thought I was controlling. He had systematically stolen his own children's college education to pay the down payment on a luxury mansion and then discarded me so I would never discover what he had done. He thought that by cutting ties, isolating the kids, and moving away, an old man would simply wither away in silence, too heartbroken to investigate. "He stole their future, Richard," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. "He sacrificed his children's higher education for a marble fountain and a zip code." "Thomas, this is grand larceny and forgery," Richard said firmly. "We can call the district attorney right now. We can have him arrested by nightfall." I closed my eyes, picturing Leo's bright smile as he showed me his report card, and Maya's dream of becoming a veterinary surgeon. If I sent Jason to prison immediately, the scandal would destroy those children emotionally. Their home would be foreclosed on, their lives thrown into utter chaos, and they would be taught to hate me forever as the grandfather who put their father in jail. "No," I said softly, opening my eyes. "Not yet. If I strike now, he'll play the victim. He'll tell the kids I'm a bitter old tyrant trying to destroy their family. I need to make sure the truth is exposed in a way he can never twist." "What are you going to do?" Richard asked.
Jason forgot one very important detail, I said, looking Richard straight in the eye. He forgot who actually controls those accounts. He thought that because he managed to execute a fraudulent withdrawal through a loophole, he owned the underlying trust structure, but he never read the master covenant I set up with Eleanor back in 2012. Over the next 4 days, I didn't sleep more than 2 hours a night. I worked closely with Richard and a veteran estate attorney named Sarah Jenkins. As we dug deeper into Jason's financial trail, the web of lies became even more sinister. Jason hadn't acted alone. Vanessa's brother, an independent mortgage broker, had helped falsify the income verification forms for their new mansion. They had stretched themselves to the absolute limit. The $330,000 stolen from the twins' tuition fund had been used as the deposit, but their monthly mortgage payment was a staggering $12,000, far beyond what Jason's salary could cover. They were relying on a secondary upcoming payout. Jason had filed paperwork to declare me medically incapacitated through a crooked clinic, planning to seize control of my primary residence and my business liquid reserves within the next 60 days. The cutting of ties wasn't an emotional outburst. It was a calculated, preemptive strike to isolate me before the final trap was sprung. My heart bled for the son I had raised. I remembered teaching him how to catch a baseball in our backyard, sitting in the front row at his college graduation, holding him when his first business venture failed, and paying off his debts without asking for a single penny back. How had the boy I loved turned into a predator who viewed his own father as nothing more than a bank account to be slaughtered? "We have everything locked down, Thomas," Sarah Jenkins told me on Friday afternoon, sliding a thick blue folder across her desk. "Your primary bank accounts, your house deed, and your business assets are now protected under an irrevocable master trust with independent court-appointed fiduciaries. Jason can't touch another cent." "What about the college funds?" I asked. Because the original 529 trust contained a strict clawback and penalty indemnity clause signed by the grantor, you, the bank has officially flagged the withdrawal as unauthorized. Under the terms of the master covenant, you have the absolute legal authority to demand immediate freeze and clawback of the funds from the receiving entity. Furthermore, because the money was used as an illicit down payment on real estate, the lender on their new mansion will automatically declare their mortgage in default the moment the funds are recalled.
"They'll lose the house," I said quietly. "In less than 30 days," Sarah replied, "and Jason will face criminal fraud charges unless the funds are fully restored to the twins' college trust." "I want to deliver the notice myself," I said. 2 days later, Jason and Vanessa were throwing a lavish housewarming party at their new Oak Ridge Estates mansion. They had invited over 40 people, Vanessa's wealthy friends, Jason's corporate colleagues, and several neighbors. I pulled my old pickup truck onto the pristine driveway, parking right behind a line of luxury sports cars. I was dressed in my plain work jacket and jeans. As I walked up the stone steps toward the grand front entrance, I could hear music, laughing, and glasses clinking inside. I pushed the door open and walked into the grand foyer. The room went quiet almost instantly. Guests turned to stare at the old man in worn work clothes standing beneath the crystal chandelier. Vanessa was standing near the catering table, holding a glass of champagne. When she saw me, her face flushed with violent anger.
She marched over, her heels clicking loudly against the polished hardwood. "What are you doing here?" she hissed under her breath, glancing nervously at her guests. "I told you you are not welcome in our life. Get out before I call the security guards." Jason rushed over from the living room, his face red with indignation. "Dad, are you insane? You're trespassing. I told you you will never see the kids again. Leave right now." Up near the second-floor balcony, I saw 14-year-old Leo and Maya looking down. When Leo saw me, his face lit up. "Grandpa!" he called out. Jason whipped around and yelled up the stairs, "Leo, Maya, go to your rooms right now. Don't look down here." The twins hesitated, but Vanessa's sharp glare forced them to retreat into the hallway. I stood my ground, looking at my son. "You told me I was toxicity, Jason. You told me I was trying to control your life with money. You told your children that their grandfather abandoned them." "You did abandon us!" Jason shouted, trying to raise his voice for the benefit of the watching crowd. "Is that why you forged my signature to steal $330,000 from your children's college tuition accounts?" I asked, my voice calm, clear, and carrying across the silent foyer. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Several of Jason's colleagues exchanged shocked glances.
Jason's eyes went wide with pure terror. "What? What are you talking about? You're crazy. He's senile, everyone. He doesn't know what he's saying." "I have the forensic audit right here, Jason," I said, reaching into my coat and pulling out the blue legal dossier. I didn't scream. I didn't raise my hands. I spoke with the quiet, crushing dignity of a father who had reached the absolute end of his patience. "You stole the money I saved for Leo and Maya's future," I continued, holding the documents out. "You liquidated their 529 college trusts to put a down payment on this house so you could pretend to be something you're not. You stole from your own children, and then you cut me off so I wouldn't find out." Vanessa's champagne glass trembled in her hand. That's a lie! Jason, tell them he's lying." Jason couldn't speak. He looked at the thick legal binder in my hands, then at the faces of his boss and neighbors, who were now staring at him with utter disgust. "The bank has already initiated the clawback process, Jason," I said softly. "The $330,000 is being recalled and returned to the Twins College Trust today, which means your mortgage lender has just been notified that your down payment was derived from fraudulent funds. The formal notice of default will arrive in your mailbox on Monday morning." Jason sank against the foyer wall, his knees visibly shaking. "Dad, no, please, you can't do this to us." "I didn't do this to you, Jason," I said, looking at him with deep, unbearable sorrow. "You did this to yourself. You sacrificed your children's education for vanity. You sacrificed your father's love for greed." I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice so only he and Vanessa could hear. "The police report for forgery is currently on my lawyer's desk. I have held off on pressing formal charges on one condition." Jason looked up, tears of panic finally breaking through his arrogant facade. "Anything, Dad. Please, anything." "You will surrender full financial guardianship of the twins' educational assets to an independent trust board. You will attend court-mandated family counseling, and you will tell Leo and Maya the absolute truth about why you lied to them about their grandfather." "And if I don't?" Jason whispered, his voice trembling. "Then the district attorney will execute the arrest warrant for grand larceny and forgery before the sun sets tomorrow."
Jason buried his face in his hands, collapsing onto his knees on the hardwood floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Vanessa stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the floor, her fake luxury lifestyle crumbling into ash around her in front of 40 dinner guests. I turned away from them and walked toward the front door. As I opened the heavy door, I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned around and saw Leo and Maya standing at the bottom of the staircase. They had heard everything. Leo looked at his father weeping on the floor, then looked up at me. He didn't say a word about the house, the money, or the school. He just walked across the foyer, wrapped his arms around my waist, and buried his face in my chest. Maya followed a second later, wrapping her arms tightly around my arm. "We missed you, Grandpa," Maya whispered, crying softly into my sleeve. "They told us you didn't want to see us anymore." I knelt down, wrapping my thick, scarred arms around both of them, holding them tight as tears finally spilled over my own eyes. "I will never leave you," I whispered into their hair. "No matter what happens, your future is safe. Grandpa is always going to take care of you." An hour later, I drove back to my quiet house on the edge of town. The moving trucks would eventually come for Jason's luxury furniture. The mansion would be reclaimed by the bank, and my son would spend the next several years paying off his debts and rebuilding his shattered life from scratch. He had lost his pride, his social standing, and the illusion of wealth he had tried so desperately to project. I walked into my quiet kitchen, filled the kettle with tap water, and set it on the stove. I sat down at the wooden kitchen island where Maya used to do her homework, holding a warm cup of tea between my calloused hands. Outside the window, the sun was setting over the hills, casting a soft, golden light across the garage workshop, where Leo's half-finished model ship still rested on the workbench. Justice had been served. The college funds were safe, locked away where no one could ever touch them again. The truth had been revealed, and my grandchildren knew that their grandfather had never stopped loving them. But as I sat alone in the quiet dusk, staring at the empty chair where Eleanor used to sit, a tear slipped down my cheek and fell into my tea. I had saved my grandchildren's future, but the family I had spent a lifetime building was broken beyond repair. And I knew that while money can easily be returned to a bank account, no amount of wealth can ever mend the quiet ache of a father's broken heart.